A Chinese whistleblower being tracked on American soil by the communist regime years after he fled China. The former Chinese regime official says some of the tools that the CCP is using are developed right here in the U.S. Here's more.
Former Chinese regime official Li Chuanyang fled China for the U.S. in 2018 and publicly cut ties with the Communist Party 2 years later. Since then, he says the surveillance hasn't stopped.
They used their power overseas and got Interpol to issue a red notice, making it impossible for me to move around.
Li said a man he believes to be a CCP agent has followed him across state lines in recent months. He says the Chinese regime can trace people through phones, payments, travel records, as well as personal contacts. And all of this was happening on U.S. soil. Regarding why he left China, Li and the Chinese regime had different narratives on the situation. Li says he left China because he could no longer tolerate the corruption of other officials. He once reported his city's party secretary to higher authorities for corrupt practices, but Chinese state-backed courts accused him of corruption, costing hundreds of millions of dollars. They are charges that Li and his lawyers say are politically motivated. Unlike many other former senior CCP officials who came to the U.S. after retiring and lived quiet lives, Li spoke publicly, criticized corruption, and focused on exposing abusive Chinese regime officials. Beijing officials also went after Li's family and friends to apply pressure on him overseas.
A lot of my partners were arrested one by one.
More than 40 of Li's relatives and friends in China, including his pregnant daughter, have been detained. Li says he has lost contact with them and still doesn't know the full details of the accusations. Beijing's overseas surveillance campaigns, known as Operation Foxhunt and Skynet, rely on technology developed by U.S. firms. It includes software that taps into and records messages, finances flights, and phone calls.
The development of China's technology to this point, especially surveillance, is definitely closely linked to Western countries, especially American high-tech companies. Simply put, they couldn't have done it without their technological support.
Chinese state media says more than 14,000 nationals have been forced back to China worldwide through pressure and intimidation. The FBI calls China's retaliation against people in the U.S. unacceptable, and the White House says it will pursue any violations of U.S. law.